Here's my starting 2 chords. And the final arrangement. Let me show you how to transform 2 boring chords into a complete, engaging melody. A great place to begin is with triad chords. Triads are chords made up of 3 notes and are the foundational building blocks of more complex chords. Triads are composed of 3 notes, a root note, a third, and a fifth. These names come from their intervallic relationships with the root note. The third is the note that is 3 scale degrees above the root, and the fifth is the note that is 5 scale degrees above the root, and so forth. I've chosen 2 adjacent chords from the A natural minor scale, A minor and G minor. These notes together create a simple yet powerful harmony. You can choose between the 4 primary types of triad chords in Western music: major, minor, diminished, and augmented. I'd recommend the first 2 if you're just getting started. To make our triad chords more interesting, we can transform them into minor 9 chords. I'm choosing minor 9 as they are common in jazz, R&B, and soul, which is the vibe I'm looking for. Right now, with our triad, we have 3 notes: the root, the third, and the fifth. To evolve this into a minor 9 chord, we need to add 2 more notes, the 7th and the 9th. This minor 9th chord is an example of an extended chord. Extended chords are formed by stacking additional thirds on top of the basic triad. This means you're adding notes beyond the basic triad, which come from the remaining scale degrees. As you add these extra notes, you enrich the harmony and add more color to the chord. To extend an A minor chord to a minor 9 chord, you can add the 7th scale degree, G, which is 10 semitones above the root, A, and the 9th scale degree, B, which is 14 semitones above the root. The same applies for the G minor chord. We've now gone from our basic triads to a more interesting minor 9th arrangement. The next step is to experiment with different inversions. Inversions involve rearranging the notes of a chord to create different sounds. This can add some variety and richness to your music, and it's something you'll quickly develop an ear for. The first thing I like to do is take the root note down an octave to provide a bass foundation. Next, let's take the 3rd scale degree, the 2nd note of the chord, and move it up an octave. Then move what was originally the 5th down an octave. By extending our initial triads and experimenting with these inversions, we create something much more tonally rich. Now that we've added more colour to our palette, it's time to adjust the timing to avoid a blocky feel. To better hear this, I've added the beat from my Nujabes tutorial. While I've kept the downbeats as anchors, I've brought forward these 2 chords by an 8th note. This technique is called Rhythmic Anticipation, where notes are brought forward before the expected beat. It plays with the listener's expectations, giving them a reason to keep listening. To enhance the musicality further, I'm going to push the notes backward, starting from the root. This technique humanizes the chords and provides a more rounded sound. Additionally, I've arpeggiated the last chord in 16th note steps to introduce some variation between the 2 bars. If we are sticking to just these 2 chords, then by varying the length of them, we can create rhythm and move away from the blocky feel and toward creating an actual progression. I'm using repeating 8th and 16th note chops of the chord to infuse some movement into the composition. To further break up the blocky feeling and add more rhythm, we can introduce passing notes here. These are simply a repetition of the previous 2 notes, but playing sequentially. Additionally, one trick that often works well is taking the notes from the chord and arpeggiating them down, back up, and then down again, filling in the gaps between the chords. I omitted the D note from the first arpeggiate downward to avoid creating a mirrored duplicate. This adds a melodic element to the progression, moving us away from a purely chordal structure. Here's our finished progression compared to the starting point. To summarize, begin by selecting a key to work within. Choose from major, minor, diminished, or augmented triad chords. For beginners, I recommend major or minor. Add additional voices to the triad to create 7th, 9th, 11th, or other extended chords. I'd recommend 9ths. Rearrange the notes of the chords to discover interesting chord voicings. Dropping the root note down an octave is a great starting point. Play with rhythmic anticipation to vary the timing and feel of the chords. Chop up and repeat the chords to add groove and movement. Do this alongside a beat to better hear the rhythm. Introduce passing notes to break up chord progressions and add melodic interest. And finally, use arpeggios to play the notes of the chords in a melodic sequence, adding depth and texture to your composition. Thank you for watching.